The galaxy was on the brink of destruction. For decades, war and chaos had spread across the stars, leaving no corner untouched. Alien empires, once proud and powerful, now crumbled under the weight of the unstoppable force invading their systems. The once thriving planets were reduced to ashes, their inhabitants forced to flee or perish in the relentless conflict. Every day seemed like a struggle for survival. Hope was a distant memory. The invaders, a mysterious alliance of alien forces, had destroyed the strongest fleets, conquered planet after planet, and left nothing in their wake but silence and ruin. No one could stand against them. The greatest armies and the most advanced technologies had failed to stop their advance. Every race in the galaxy watched helplessly as their homes were taken, their people scattered, and their resistance crushed. The invaders were merciless, their motives unclear, but their power was undeniable. The galaxy's once vibrant civilizations were now shadows of their former selves. For years, a few scattered survivors hid in the dark corners of the galaxy, desperate to find a way to fight back. The leaders of the remaining planets held meetings, desperate for a solution. But there was no answer. Even the most advanced warships built for battle had been torn apart by the invaders' overwhelming strength. The galaxy's brightest minds worked tirelessly, but they couldn't find a way to turn the tide. It seemed as though the end had come. The leaders of the galaxy were no longer focused on victory. They were focused on survival. Every planet, every colony faced a choice: resist until the last breath, or surrender to the inevitable. There were whispers of alliances forming between the last free civilizations, but even that felt like a desperate attempt to delay the inevitable. The invaders' forces were too strong, too numerous. Their fleets filled the skies, and their armies marched across every world they touched. In the quiet of the council chambers, leaders exchanged grim words. "We can't stop them," one said. "We can only hope to survive long enough to send our people to safety." Another added, "Our time has passed. The galaxy will fall. All we can do now is try to protect what little remains." The people, too, had begun to lose hope. In the cities, the once thriving markets were empty. Streets that had once buzzed with life were now silent. No one looked up at the sky anymore. There were no more hopes of a bright future, no more dreams of a victorious tomorrow. It was as though the galaxy itself had given up. It seemed as if the stars themselves had dimmed in despair, a reflection of the hopelessness that gripped every world. Then one day, a message arrived. It wasn't expected. It wasn't even believed at first. A lone transmission was intercepted, a signal that had come from the furthest reaches of the galaxy, a place where few ventured, where few believed anything could survive. The message was simple, but it carried an undeniable weight. "We need help." It was sent from the last remaining colony on Earth. At first, the galaxy's leaders dismissed the message. After all, Earth had been thought to be lost, just like every other planet the invaders had destroyed. But the message persisted, a beacon in the darkness, calling for aid. It came from humanity, the last race that had stood against the invaders. Before, they too had been crushed, or so it was believed. No one had expected this. The galaxy had all but forgotten about Earth. The humans, once known for their defiance, had been wiped out in the early years of the war. Or so everyone thought. But this message said otherwise. It carried the faintest glimmer of hope in the midst of the galaxy's darkest hour. The question on every mind was the same: how could humanity still be alive? Some thought it was a trick, a last-ditch effort to delay the inevitable. But others, the more hopeful, saw it as a sign. Could this be the moment the galaxy had been waiting for? Could humanity, the underdog, rise from the ashes and turn the tide of the war? The message was brief, but it carried a heavy promise. We are coming. We will not let the galaxy fall. The message didn't explain how or why humanity was still alive, but it was a call to arms. It was a plea for help. The galaxy, weary from years of war, didn't know what to think. Was this a new hope, or just another false hope in a galaxy drowning in despair? But there was something about the message that struck a chord with the remaining survivors. Humanity had always been the wild card, the species that fought against overwhelming odds. And now, against all reason, they were promising to come to the galaxy's rescue. The leaders of the remaining planets hesitated. Could they trust this message? Could humanity truly make a difference when the galaxy was on the brink of total collapse? There was a long silence in the council chambers as the message echoed in the minds of those who still clung to hope. The galaxy was on the verge of giving up, yet here was a spark, a glimmer of light in the vast darkness. Maybe, just maybe, the galaxy hadn't lost everything. The invaders might have thought they had won, but the galaxy, against all odds, was about to learn that humanity wasn't done yet. The galaxy had been waiting for a sign, something to hold on to in the endless sea of despair. But nothing could have prepared the inhabitants of the galaxy for what came next. The moment the message was received, it spread like wildfire. The remaining leaders and survivors gathered in secret, unsure of what to believe. Could humanity, the once defeated species, truly be on its way to save them all? Days passed, and the void of space remained silent. But then, on the 5th day, after the message, something happened, something that no one could deny. A strange distortion appeared in the distant corners of the galaxy. It was as though the very fabric of space was being bent. And then, the impossible happened. A fleet of colossal warships emerged from the dark reaches of space. These were no ordinary ships. Their sleek, intimidating forms shimmered in the darkness as they emerged from the wormholes. They were massive, beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Each ship was a behemoth, bristling with weapons capable of leveling entire planets. But there was something more to these ships, something that commanded respect and fear. The humans had not just come to fight. They had come to change the balance of the entire war. The ship's dark hulls gleamed with energy, their engines pulsing with raw power. There was no mistaking it. This was humanity's war fleet, and it had arrived with a vengeance. At the sight of the fleet, a shock wave rippled through the galaxy. The invaders had never anticipated this. They had assumed Earth had been destroyed, wiped from the galaxy's map. But now, humanity's war fleet stood before them, a force like no other. The galaxy's survivors watched in awe and disbelief as the ships appeared in full formation, blocking the stars themselves as they moved into position. The first message from the humans was simple but powerful. Prepare to witness the strength of humanity. It wasn't just a statement, it was a declaration. The galaxy now knew that humanity wasn't just a hopeful plea. It was a force to be reckoned with. The invaders, who had been certain of their victory, suddenly found themselves facing an enemy unlike anything they had ever seen. These were no diplomats. These were warriors. And they had come to end the invasion. The fleet's commander, a woman named Captain Isabella Coleman, stood aboard the flagship, her eyes scanning the vast expanse of space. She had seen the destruction, the suffering, the endless battles, but she also knew the true nature of humanity. No matter how dark, the times they never gave up, and today the galaxy would see that resolve. We've lost everything, Captain Coleman spoke quietly to her officers. But we still have one thing they'll never take from us: our will to fight. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of a galaxy's last hope. As the human warships continued to move into position, the invaders, who had once believed they controlled everything, began to panic. They had underestimated humanity, and now they realized the grave mistake they had made. The entire galaxy held its breath. The humans had arrived, and they were ready to fight back. In the heart of the human fleet aboard the command ship Vanguard, Captain Coleman's eyes narrowed as she stared at the enemy formations in the distance. "Prepare to engage," she ordered. "We don't stop until they're gone. This is humanity's war now." Her voice, calm yet filled with unwavering determination, sent a ripple of confidence through her crew. They had trained for this moment for years. They knew the stakes. It wasn't just about saving their own people anymore. It was about saving the galaxy. They had come to restore balance, to bring justice, and to give hope to those who had lost. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the survivors of the broken empires and shattered worlds began to rally. Messages of hope flooded the communications networks. The galaxy's people, once broken and scattered, found new courage. They realized that the human fleet wasn't just their salvation, it was their chance to reclaim their homes, their future, and their pride. The first battle was about to begin. As the enemy forces saw humanity's warships charging toward them, they scrambled to reorganize, but it was too late. The humans were not here to negotiate, they were here to win. On the Vanguard, Captain Coleman watched as the fleet's weapon systems powered up. She was ready. The moment they had all been waiting for had finally come. Humanity's war fleet was about to show the galaxy the true meaning of strength. "Let's make sure they never forget the name Earth," she said with a steely resolve. And with that, the first salvo of the war was fired. The enemy's flagship, the center of their mighty forces, took a direct hit from humanity's first round of fire. The shockwave from the explosion rippled through the invaders' fleet, sending their forces into disarray. It was only the beginning. Humanity had finally arrived to claim their place in the galaxy. The galaxy, once filled with hopelessness, now had a new hope. Humanity had come to change everything. The battle for the galaxy was only just beginning, but one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. The battle had begun, but it was far from over. The first strike had shattered the confidence of the invaders, but they were not easily defeated. The shockwave of humanity's initial assault had caused chaos, but it also spurred the alien forces into action. They were no longer fighting an unknown enemy. They were facing the humans, a species that had risen from the ashes when everyone had counted them out. And now, the galaxy would see just how relentless humanity could be. Humanity's war fleet pressed forward, its massive ships cutting through space with terrifying precision, their weapons fired with deadly accuracy, their engines pulsing with energy. Each warship was a fortress, brimming with cutting-edge technology that had been developed in secret, away from the eyes of the invaders. The invaders, once convinced of their superiority, now found themselves outmatched. For every strike they launched, humanity responded with overwhelming force. Captain Isabella Coleman stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, watching as her fleet tore into the enemy formations. The ships of the invaders were fast, but they were no match for the sheer power and resilience of humanity's forces. Each time the enemy made a move, humanity countered with precision. The invaders' best strategies faltered against a fleet that refused to back down. "We've underestimated them," the invader commander muttered as the view of his flagship filled the screen. His voice was laced with disbelief. Humanity was fighting back with an intensity they had never imagined. "Reorganize the fleet. We can still win this. They can't sustain this pace forever." But the human fleet wasn't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something more. The words of their leaders echoed through the ranks of every soldier and crew member. "We fight to protect what we love. We fight because we are human." The enemy fleet, despite its vast numbers, began to show signs of strain. Humanity's fleet, though fewer in number, fought with a unity and purpose that was unmatched. Each ship was a battle station, and every crew member was prepared for the fight of their lives. They had been through hell, and now they were giving everything to turn the tide. As humanity's ships advanced, they encountered the invaders' flagship, a monstrous vessel that towered over the battlefield. It was the heart of the alien forces, the symbol of their dominance. But the humans had no intention of retreating or negotiating. They weren't here to talk. They were here to end the war. On the Vanguard, Captain Coleman locked her eyes on the massive warship. Her hand hovered over the control panel. This was the moment. The enemy had underestimated humanity, but now they would understand just how dangerous Earth's warriors truly were. "Prepare to fire the main cannon," she commanded, her voice unwavering. As the order was given, the massive cannon aboard the Vanguard hummed to life, glowing with energy. It was a weapon unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. designed specifically to pierce through the heart of the most formidable ships. The weapon charged, and in a blinding flash it released its devastating power. The shot hit the invader flagship with terrifying force, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The flagship staggered as its shields buckled under the strain. For a moment there was silence. And then, the flagship erupted in a massive explosion. The flames of the blast tore through space, and the invader fleet was thrown into disarray. The mighty ship that had once been invincible was now a broken shell, drifting in space, its remains a testament to humanity's strength. On the ground, the remaining survivors of the galaxy's broken empires watched in awe. This was not just a victory, it was the beginning of the end for the invaders. Humanity's relentless counterattack had proven that no matter how powerful the enemy, they could be defeated. The galaxy, once on the brink of extinction, had a new hope. But the fight was far from over. The remaining alien forces regrouped, more determined than ever. The invasion was far from finished. There were still countless worlds to conquer, and the invaders were not about to let a small force like humanity stop them. Their pride had been wounded, and they would fight to reclaim their position at the top of the galaxy. Humanity, however, had proven that they could not be defeated so easily. With every battle they fought, they grew stronger. The galaxy was watching, and for the first time in years, there was a spark of hope. The tide was turning, and the invaders had no idea what was coming next. Captain Coleman stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, staring out at the remains of the enemy fleet. She knew this was just the beginning. The humans had struck their first blow, but the war was far from over. There were more battles to fight, more enemies to face, but one thing was certain: humanity would not stop. The war fleet had arrived, and they were here to stay. "We've only just begun," Captain Coleman said, her voice filled with conviction. "This is our galaxy now." And with that, the next phase of the battle began. The galaxy was waking up, and humanity's war fleet was leading the charge. The universe had always been filled with stories of grand civilizations, powerful empires, and the ebb and flow of wars that determined the fate of entire species. But none of those stories had prepared the galaxy for what was about to unfold. The turning point in the war had arrived, and it would change the course of history forever. The shattered remnants of the invader forces regrouped quickly after the destruction of their flagship. Though their morale had been shattered, they were not without resources. The fleet commander, once confident in their inevitable victory, now steeled himself for a final, all-out assault. The enemy knew they could not afford to lose, not now, when they had come so far. They called upon every last warship, every weapon, every soldier they had left. But humanity was no longer just defending. The war fleet was on the offensive now, pushing forward with an intensity that left the invaders reeling. The battle had shifted, and the galaxy was watching in awe as humanity's fleet tore through the enemy lines with precision. It wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. It was a fight for the future of the galaxy itself. On the bridge of the Vanguard, Captain Coleman stood as the battle raged outside. Her eyes scanned the screen as her officers relayed reports from the front lines. The war fleet had grown stronger with every victory. The tactics humanity used were unlike anything the invaders had encountered. The human ships were faster, more agile, and most importantly, they were relentless. "This is the moment we've been waiting for," Captain Coleman said, her voice resolute. "We don't just want to survive anymore. We will end this war. We will show them that Earth will not be extinguished. Not now, not ever." Her words resonated through the crew. Humanity was no longer fighting a defensive war. They were charging forward, taking back the galaxy one battle at a time. The sheer willpower of humanity was their greatest weapon. The alien forces may have had superior numbers and advanced technology, but they did not understand the strength of human resolve. This war had awakened something inside humanity, a fire that could not be put out. As the Vanguard led the charge, the remaining alien fleets scrambled to keep up. They tried to form defensive lines, but humanity had already broken through their outer defenses. The invaders were losing their grip on the galaxy. Every assault they launched was met with a counterattack. Every strategy they devised was turned against them. Humanity's war fleet fought not just with their ships but with the courage and determination of an entire species that had been pushed to the brink. The invader commander, now desperate, watched from his command center as his forces fell back. The flagship was gone. Their largest warships were crumbling and the once unbeatable alien armada was scattered. They had underestimated humanity in a way that would haunt them forever. The enemy forces, once full of arrogance, were now on the verge of panic, but it wasn't over yet. The invader commander made a final desperate decision. He would lead the last remaining forces in a suicide mission to take down humanity's war fleet, even if it meant the destruction of their own fleet. This was their final stand. The enemy fleet broke into smaller, more desperate units, each one aiming to take down humanity's most vital ships. It was a suicidal move. But the invader commander had no choice. The humans were relentless. It was, either they fell back into the depths of space or they fought with everything they had. As the final wave of enemy ships charged at the vanguard, Captain Coleman didn't hesitate. The ship's weapons powered up once more, the engines roaring with unrelenting energy. "Fire at will," she commanded, her voice calm, even as the chaos around her escalated. Humanity's fleet was ready to meet their enemies head-on. The battle wasn't about winning anymore. It was about proving that humanity would never back down. The sky above the battlefield exploded with the fire of countless ships. Humanity's fleet tore into the remaining enemy vessels, their advanced weapons cutting through alien hulls with deadly precision. The invaders had no chance. Their final gambit was shattered in the blink of an eye. On the vanguard, the atmosphere was tense. The crew members watched the massive explosions light up the void of space, their hearts pounding. Victory was within reach, but Captain Coleman knew better than to celebrate too soon. They had gained ground, but the war was not yet over. As the final remnants of the enemy fleet began to retreat, Captain Coleman's mind shifted to the next step. The galaxy had been ravaged by years of war, and now was the time to rebuild. "Send word to the rest of the galaxy," she said to her communications officer. "Tell them to prepare for the aftermath. This is humanity's war, but the galaxy will rebuild together." The battle was won, but the war had not yet reached its conclusion. The galaxy's broken civilizations now had a chance to rise again, and humanity would lead them in their recovery. Earth had not just saved the galaxy, it had redefined it. The humans had proven that even in the darkest times they could rise up and fight for the future. For the first time in years, the people of the galaxy dared to believe in a brighter tomorrow. The war was far from over, but the turning point had arrived. The galaxy would rebuild stronger than before under the guidance of those who had fought to save it. And humanity would stand at the forefront, a beacon of hope in a galaxy that had once been on the edge of destruction. The final remnants of the invader fleet were retreating into the void of space, leaving behind a galaxy that had been scarred by years of war. Humanity's war fleet had delivered the decisive blow, but the true test had only just begun. The galaxy was now free, but it was broken. Entire civilizations had been destroyed, countless lives lost, and countless worlds left in ruins. The question was no longer about winning the war. It was about how to rebuild the shattered remnants of the galaxy and ensure that such destruction would never happen again. Captain Isabella Coleman stood at the command center of the Vanguard, staring at the view of the galaxy that sprawled before her. The stars, once dimmed by the shadows of the invaders, now twinkled brightly. It was a symbol of the new beginning, a sign that the galaxy was waking up from its long nightmare. But, beneath the surface of victory, Captain Coleman could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. She had led humanity's war fleet to victory, but the peace that followed would be far more complicated. "We did it," her first officer said, his voice thick with awe. "We actually did it. The galaxy's free." Coleman didn't respond. Immediately, her gaze remained fixed on the stars as if looking for something she couldn't yet see. "Yes," she said finally, her voice calm but tinged with uncertainty. "But we haven't won yet. The war is over. But the rebuilding begins now. The galaxy needs us more than ever." Across the galaxy, the survivors of the once vibrant civilizations were waking from their despair. Messages of humanity's victory spread from one planet to another, and for the first time in years, hope began to stir in the hearts of those who had lost everything. The galaxy, it seemed, had found a new savior, but it wasn't just humanity's war fleet that would lead them. It was humanity's ability to rebuild, to rise from the ashes of destruction, that would be the true test. The galaxy's leaders, those who had survived the years of conflict, began to reach out. They requested meetings with humanity's leaders, hoping to establish alliances and create a new order. Some were cautious, wary of humanity's sudden rise to power, while others were eager to work together to rebuild their broken worlds. Captain Coleman and the other leaders of humanity understood the gravity of their situation. They couldn't just claim victory and walk away. They had become the galaxy's symbol of hope, and it was a role they would have to live up to in the years to come. Humanity had saved the galaxy from the brink of annihilation, but now they had to prove that they could be the guiding force that would rebuild it. "We can't just force our way in," Captain Coleman said during a meeting with her officers. "We need to work with them, rebuild alongside them, and show them that we're not just conquerors, we're allies too. We need to create something stronger than the fear of the invaders. We need to create something worth fighting for." Her words resonated with everyone in the room. They knew the galaxy's future wasn't just about fighting wars, it was about creating a lasting peace, a peace that would stand the test of time. But peace wouldn't come easily. It had to be earned, through cooperation, understanding, and trust. Humanity had shown the galaxy that it could fight. Now it needed to show them that it could lead. The process of rebuilding began slowly but surely. The once broken worlds began to heal. Human diplomats were dispatched to various planets, helping to broker peace agreements between the survivors of the old empires and the new powers that had emerged. The human war fleet, now a symbol of protection, was transformed into a peacekeeping force. Their ships, once designed for destruction, now patrolled the stars, ensuring that the galaxy remained safe from any new threats. Humanity's war fleet, however, was not without its scars. The fleet had been through countless battles, each one leaving its mark on the ships and their crews. There were survivors of battles, but there were also those who had been lost. The human soldiers had witnessed the horrors of war, and they would carry those memories with them forever. The peace they fought for would be a constant reminder of the cost of victory, but through it all, humanity's resolve remained unbroken. The leaders of the galaxy came together, and over time they created a new coalition, one that was built on the principles of unity, peace, and shared responsibility. Earth, once on the edge of destruction, now stood at the heart of a new galactic order. As the years passed, the galaxy began to prosper again. The scars of war healed, slowly but surely, and the people of the galaxy started to rebuild their homes, their lives, and their futures. The once distant dream of unity between the galaxy's many species was no longer a distant hope. It was becoming a reality. Captain Coleman stood once more on the bridge of the Vanguard, watching as new ships, built for peace, soared across the stars. The galaxy was no longer a place of endless war. It had become a place of renewal. The stars above shone brighter than ever, and for the first time in centuries, the people of the galaxy could look toward the future with hope. "Humanity saved us," one of her crew members said, as he watched the new fleet of peacekeepers depart. "But now we're all part of something bigger. We're part of something that will last." Captain Coleman nodded, her face a mixture of pride and determination. "Yes, we saved the galaxy. But it's not about who saved whom. It's about what we do with this second chance. And I believe that together, we can make the galaxy a place where all races can thrive." As the Vanguard sailed toward a peaceful horizon, the galaxy finally knew what it meant to have a future. Humanity had shown them that even in the darkest of times, there was always hope. The war was over, but the true victory was only just beginning. The galaxy had been reborn, and humanity had given it the chance to grow together into something greater than ever before. And so the stars shone brighter than ever, not as symbols of war, but as beacons of peace and hope for all.